Hello
Good
and
afternoon.
every time, every
Every damn time.
every single time. Um, Hi, another episode of You Talk here. This time we are doing a three-parter, and we are talking about the Murray-Darling River System, the most important
If
river system of the country, of which, surprisingly, more than I think three-quarters of Australians, I think was a stat, don't really know anything about it.
I mean, they know it exists, right?
Well, they know something
Right?
called the Murray-Darling exists. I don't think they
Right?
know. I don't think they know what it is. I don't think they know why it's important, and
Okay.
I don't think they know well why it's constantly a disaster zone, let alone what it needs.
Okay, so
Um,
in that case, I think we sort of have this mapped out. So today, I guess,
we need to tell them
those
what
three
this is.
quarters of Australians, those three quarters of Australians who we hope are some of the people taking note of this. Now, this is one of Kyle's pet projects, right? We've talked a lot about the Murray-Darling River system, Kyle, and about some of the ecological threats it faces, and
Yes,
how mismanagement and poor decision making and
is
sometimes corruption
100% the cause of that.
have led to a situation where it is under near perpetual threat, but how not everything's lost. I think
The
that's sort of where we're going with this. But perhaps
perpetual threat is that
today,
does not even do it justice. It is in a state of perpetual disaster, which we will get to.
yeah,
But
yeah,
before we
yeah,
can
I
get to all
understand
that,
this, but like,
we need to,
what is the damn Murray Darling Basin,
yes,
Kyle?
we
Like,
need,
that's
we
what we
need,
need to cover. For
okay,
75% of Australians, can you
yes.
tell them what is the Murray Darling Basin? Is it even made of water or is it just liquid helium?
liquid, liquid helium. You know, that's a thought for later. Stop distracting me, Horst. So, okay, so now all I can think about is liquid helium.
Magnets.
Focus.
What is the Murray Darling
What
Basin,
is the
Kyle?
Murray-Darling Basin? Okay, so the Murray-Darling
Tell me
Basin
about the
is,
Murray Darling Basin.
okay, Godfather Horst. Um, so the Murray-Darling Basin is Australia's largest and most important river system, and it is essentially an area of water catchment. Now, a water catchment basin is essentially a large area where all of the water is sort of self-contained within that area. So if rain falls in the Murray-Darling, it is only going to flow through the Murray-Darling Basin. Now, the Murray-Darling Basin is named for the two rivers, the Murray River and the Darling River, which also have a bunch of tributary rivers, essentially making this a very large area of plains and riverlands. Now, with that being said, I'm sure that I'm going to remember in post-production to put the maps on the screen to actually demonstrate it. And I'm going
Right
to
now, this
say,
sounds like the Parramatta River. You know that marshy bit near Rydalmere?
I don't actually know that marshy bit
I'll
near
have to show
Rydalmere.
you it sometime.
Oh
It's
wait, no, I remember.
beautiful.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I used to live near there. I remember what
Yeah,
you thought. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
This
near
sounds
Rose
like
Hill.
it has that sort of vibe.
Kind of. Only see the Parramatta River. It's almost like a steep decline to get to it.
Mm,
Imagine the Murray Darling as the land is very flat, and the river, when it's high, can actually flood over the top of it. So there are in Sydney, there's a couple of flood zones that, for one reason or another, property developers thought it would be great to build on. And those areas have
Nepean
been flooded.
River.
Yeah, yeah. So those areas have been flooded. So it'd be kind of like that. And that's how
Okay.
flat the land is. Essentially, a good portion of the Murray-Darling are what's called floodplains. And that's where
Yes.
it's so flat that the water, it rains and the water level just rises. Essentially the entire area is flooded, and it could be as little as a couple of centimeters, could be as much as 10 odd feet. And so the Murray Darling, essentially, it's located across four states. So the north and northeast part is in Queensland, the south and southwest of Queensland. The bulk of it runs through New South Wales, and then about roughly a third of it is the northern half of Victoria.
Yep.
Beyond, and this is all beyond the Great Dividing Range. That those mountains that sort of are to the, they sort of run along the east coast. And so to the west, and if you get to the Alpine regions in Victoria, to the north and northwest is where the Murray-Darling is. And then there's the small part of the Murray-Darling that also runs through South Australia. It's not much of it, but it is a little bit, and it's where you'll find where the Murray-Darling exits into the sea. And you'll find the town of Renmark there. Shout out to Renmark. So
I think I actually visited Renmark when I
really,
was like very small. Yeah,
cool.
I traveled all over Australia when I was younger. I've seen a
Nice.
lot of parts of Australia, and I still remember, in Eucla, there's this sign
Eucla?
when you
Where's
enter
that?
Eucla. It's this tiny little town. I'm just trying to remember which damn state it was in. I was pretty sure it was Western Australia, but it would have ended up being in bloody Queensland just to make an ass of me. No, it was
Yeah.
in Western Australia, right? And they have this sign when you go in on the road. It says "Welcome to sunny Eucla." I was there for 3 days, and it rained the entire time. That's just one of those idiosyncrasies of the Australian environment.
Yeah, that's Australia in a nutshell.
Australia in a nutshell, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I guess I've kind of described where the Murray-Darling's located, and what the Murray-Darling is. It's a system of rivers on what are basically flat plains for the most part. And there's some bushland here and there that's intermixed with it, but it's mostly flat plains of grassland. Now,
Okay.
why does this place matter? Because
And
it's the
hang on,
food
just
bowl
a
of
quick
us.
question. Just a
Yeah.
quick question. Those grasslands, is there any possibility of I know there was some research into using grasslands as a carbon sink. Is there any possibility of bolstering that in the Murray-Darling specifically as well, so that it can
Yes.
help contribute to the fight against global warming?
Yes, in fact, there's I've actually, this is sort of another one of my pet projects that I call the Continental Carbon Sink Project. And essentially, what you can do is you can use cattle to mimic the
Mm,
movements of herd animals in nature, and well, very in that oversimplified explanation, essentially that rejuvenates the land and allows grass to grow. And
yeah, and
you
let's be
can
entirely honest, cows produce enough poop. Well, I'm a farm kid. I'm not going to pull the punches here. Cows are full of shit at every possible moment.
yes.
And that's really good because that contributes to the nitrogen cycle. So it also
Hmm.
rejuvenates the ground if used
Yes.
correctly.
Yes, well, that's part of what's called holistic land management. A guy
Mm.
named Alan Savory in South Africa developed it. But we don't have enough time to really get into that. But I will say yes, we absolutely can, and we can do more than just the Murray Darling. We could with a
So
proper irrigation network also also, I guess, grassify would be the word. Much of the Lake Eyre Basin, which is another water basin. However, that one receives significantly less rain, and its rivers are most dried up most of the time.
I remember Lake and honestly, I don't think we need to do too much to that because it forms an interesting ecological system on its own. But I will just no, no, I'll remind you, Kyle, and I'll disclose to everyone else here that I'm a big fan of the Bradfield scheme for the irrigation of Central Australia by
Yes,
geoengineering in parts of Queensland. And I think this is an application of that idea too. Of course, it was
to a degree.
ludicrous. It was ludicrous in the 1920s when it was first proposed. That
Yes.
scale of geotechnical engineering was too expensive to be
Well, it's
worth
not
it. But I
just that.
think
See, the biggest problem with the Bradfield scheme was that the water evaporation rates per like mile or kilometer were estimated based on water evaporation rates in Germany. Whereas we have three times the evaporation rate here. So unfortunately, it was found that it would very likely not be able to fill the Lake Eyre Basin to create the inland sea that John Bradfield was imagining. However, there is a modern version of the Bradfield scheme that actually feeds that water into the Murray-Darling itself. I think in the Warrego River, which is like the northernmost river of the Murray-Darling Basin. Very interesting stuff, and I definitely recommend people look into it. But we're running out of time here, so I'll very quickly get to why the Murray-Darling is important. It is the food bowl of not just Australia, but also a decent chunk of Asia now. We grow a lot
don't
of
we
food
export
there.
a crap load of wheat to China?
Yes, a lot of wheat, a lot of barley.
China's one of our most important trading partners, and as much as we will push back against the idea of the hegemony of capital that results from over centralization, without the ability to trade with other people, other countries, we find ourselves in a poor position politically, economically, culturally.
We do, but at the same time, sort of the biggest strength of the Murray-Darling is that as long as the Murray-Darling is healthy, we will always have a very stable food supply. There are many countries in the world which, due to not having stable water supplies or stable river systems, don't have enough food security. And that's where you see famines. And so, the Murray-Darling is incredibly important in terms of food security, in terms of economic stability for exports to China, I think South Korea as well, other Southeast Asian nations, and overall is for those reasons very important to preserve. Now, we've run out of time, so we have to end it there, but I hope this has given you a solid idea of what the Murray-Darling is and why it's important.
Just make sure you pull up like the good maps that have like the crayon coloring, just so we can keep the audience attention, because like bright colors are great for that.
You know what? Maybe I'll do like an art thing where I draw it at the same time, and I'll just put that over it. I'll just draw. Yeah.
Just sketch it in real time. Have an overlay of yourself talking like a Twitch streamer. It'll be fine.
Problem is, I can't draw for shit, so it's gonna be like.
Neither can I.
All right.
Okay, we'll see you all soon.
Catch you later. Have a good one.